On the coast of West Africa, there's a country born from this incredibly audacious idea, a place whose very name is a promise, Liberia. But its story? Wow. It's a story of these impossible dreams side by side with just devastating nightmares. It's really a stark reminder of how that struggle for freedom can, on one hand, forge a nation, and on the other, completely tear it apart.
The love of liberty brought us here. I mean, that's more than just a motto, right? It's the founding principle of an entire country. It's like this inscription of hope just carved right into its identity from the absolute beginning.
So Liberia's origin is, well, it's totally unique. It was set up back in 1822 as this project by something called the American Colonization Society. And the whole idea? To create a haven, a place where formerly enslaved and freeborn people of color from the U.S. could build a brand new society, far away from the brutal discrimination they were facing. It actually became Africa's very first republic, a huge symbol of Black self-determination.
But that right there, that's the central, tragic paradox of Liberia's history. How does a nation that was founded on this beautiful ideal of freedom become the stage for one of Africa's most brutal civil wars, a conflict that ends up costing 250,000 lives? To even begin to understand that, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning.
All right, so to find the answer, we really need to look at the very foundation of this unprecedented colony. The American Colonization Society, it was a really strange alliance. On one hand, you have these abolitionist Quakers who genuinely, truly believed free Black people would have a better shot at life in Africa. But then, on the other hand, you had slaveholders. And their motive? They saw removing free people of color as a way to make slavery more secure, by getting rid of what they saw as an inspiration for rebellions. So yeah, a complicated and fraught beginning is putting it mildly.
So the timeline shows things move pretty quickly. The first settlers land in 1822. And get this, just 25 years later, they declare independence. But what's really crucial here is that the United States didn't even formally recognize their independence until 1862, right in the middle of its own Civil War.
And this right here, this really shows you the central fault line that would define Liberia for the next century and a half. The settlers, who came to be known as Americo-Liberians, brought their American-style culture and Protestantism with them, and they pretty much immediately established themselves as a ruling elite over the 16 different indigenous ethnic groups who already live there. So you've got two completely different worlds living in the same land, but with one of them holding all the political and economic power.
I mean, just think about that for a second. For over 130 years, this tiny, elite minority governed the whole country. And the indigenous peoples, the overwhelming majority of the population, they weren't even granted birthright citizenship until 1904. You can just imagine the deep, simmering resentment that this created. And, well, eventually, it was going to boil over.
So, this huge political division, it was pretty much mirrored in the country's economy, which, as we'll see, was built on an incredibly fragile foundation.
Okay, check this out. 1 million acres. In the 1920s, the Liberian government leased that much land to the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. And the lease? It was for 99 years. Just one deal basically cemented the entire country's economic dependence on one foreign corporation and one single commodity, rubber. And you can really see the whole story in this chart. The country's economic engine was all about rubber, iron ore, timber, and diamonds. The economy was almost completely based on just extracting and exporting these natural resources. So sure, when global prices were high, Liberia did okay. But the moment they fell, or as we'll see, when conflict erupted, the entire system was designed to just collapse. Liberia also carved out this really unique niche for itself by offering what's called a flag of convenience for ships. It ended up operating the world's second-largest maritime registry. Now, this brought in some good money, for sure, but it also just tied the nation's fortunes even tighter to the whims of the global economy.
And then the Civil Wars came. And that economic house of cards didn't just fall apart, it was absolutely obliterated. The economy shrank by 90%. I mean, that's almost unbelievable.
So what happened? How did this dream unravel so completely?
Well, the dam finally broke in 1980. A military coup led by a man named Samuel Doe violently ended more than a century of Americo-Liberian rule. But here's the thing. Instead of healing that old divide, it just flipped the power dynamic. It deepened the ethnic tensions. And all that instability, it just paved the way for a warlord named Charles Taylor to launch the first Civil War in 1989.
And from there, things just spiraled into a second, even more brutal war. The human cost was just staggering. An estimated 250,000 people were killed. To put that in perspective, that was about 8% of the entire population at the time. A whole generation was just lost to the violence.
And what fueled these wars? It was the country's own natural resources, the very things that should have been a blessing. Diamonds, timber. They became a curse. Warlords exploited them to buy weapons and fund their militias. This is where the term blood diamonds became infamous. Eventually, the international community had to step in with sanctions, which pretty much turned Liberia into a pariah state, totally isolated from the rest of the world.
But after 14 long years of war, a peace agreement was finally signed in 2003. And literally from the ashes, Liberia began the absolutely monumental task of rebuilding itself.
And in 2005, there was this incredible moment of hope. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president. And this wasn't just a turning point for Liberia, it was historic for the entire continent. She was Africa's first ever female president, a Harvard-educated economist, a Nobel Peace Prize winner. She really became this powerful global symbol of recovery and a new democratic future.
But the road to recovery has been, to put it lightly, incredibly challenging. This chart here shows the stark reality of it all. I mean, on the one hand, you've got real progress. Life expectancy is up, which is great. But on the other hand, the economic situation is just dire. Only about 15% of the population has a formal job.
And today, the country is still grappling with these huge, deep-seated challenges. You've got corruption, which is endemic at pretty much every level of government. The environment is still under constant threat from illegal logging and mining. And the reality is, Liberia is still one of the world's poorest nations. Which, brings us all the way back to that central question. Liberia's story is without a doubt a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But it's also this really sobering lesson in how easily a dream can be fractured by inequality and conflict. So, can a nation born from a dream of freedom ever fully escape its complicated past? Can it truly heal those deep wounds to build a future that lives up to its name? That right there remains Liberia's greatest challenge.